कहते हैं मंजिलें आपको आसानी से नहीं मिलती। अगर आप दिल से चाहें तो वो आसानी मुश्किलें बहुत आसानी में बदल सकती है। नमस्ते, मेरा नाम आयुष केसरी है। जज्बात के अगले एपिसोड में मैं हम आप सभी का स्वागत करता हूँ। हर एपिसोड में हम नई शख्सियत के साथ मौजूद होते हैं, उनकी जीवनी को लेकर के उन्होंने क्या नया और क्या अच्छा किया। आज हमारे साथ ऐसी ही शख्सियत मौजूद है जिनसे हम उनके बारे में जानने का कोशिश करेंगे और कोशिश करेंगे उनसे क्या क्या सीख सकते हैं। तो आज हमारे साथ हैं डॉक्टर सारत चंद्रा सर। आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आज के इस एपिसोड में।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। मुझे भी बहुत खुशी है कि मैं आपके साथ जुड़ सका हूँ इस प्रोग्राम में।
तो जब आप पीछे मुड़ के देखते हैं तो क्या क्या यादें आती है आपको, अगर मैं खास करके आपके स्कूल और कॉलेज डेज की बात करूं?
So, so when I look back into school, I think I was not a very bright person. I was not a very bright student. So I think every person has that point of breakthrough. Everybody have gone through their own areas of struggles. And I was not such a good bright student almost till 10th standard because I never took studies so seriously. And then when I passed my 10th standard board, I think I just ended up with something like 55 or 56 percentage. And almost the entire class had made more than 60%. So I was almost somewhere near the bottom. So that was a point of realization for me. That was a wake up call. And that's when, I started taking studies seriously. Because at that point of time, I realized that, you need to study if you need to actually make a career out of, you have to create a career. And you need to create a career if you have to go up in the socioeconomic status of ladder. And if you need to climb up this ladder, it's very important for you to earn money or to settle in life. So all those responsibilities, they had come crashing down on me at this point of time. So I consider this retrospectively, when I look back, I think that this is more like a breakthrough phenomena. It happens, I think, with almost everybody. So some people are bright right from the smaller classes. Some people have a wake up call later on. So I think both of them have their own pros and cons. But looking back, I feel that if you have an initial failure when you're young and then you have a breakthrough or a wake up call, then you're already aware of your failures. So when you move forward in life, that always becomes a benchmark for you, which you can look back, which you can remember, which you can use as a, I would say, a gold standard in quotes, or which you would look at it as some kind of a uh, level for beyond which you have need to rise. So that is how I look back when I see back in my school and college
Can you
days.
just share that class 10, when you have received 56%, you realize that you need to do something for your own future? So when you decided to get into medicine, medical basically, why, which has, like, somebody has inspired or something which has came into your life which has inspired you to get into medicine and medical, the education I'm talking about. So give me something about the idea where you got to get into the medication.
So I'll be very honest here. I was very much attracted to physics. I really used to. So after my 10th, I started working very hard. And I realized that, when you are met with a lot of failures, it's very difficult for you to break through a certain point because your level of confidence is low, and you don't think you can. I mean, you're always doubting yourself. You think that even if I work hard, am I going to make it? Even if I work very very hard, am I going to get the? Is it actually going to translate into real time marks, or am I going to make this point? So you need success for you to have certain degree of confidence, because success is the key. And when you don't have any kind of success to fall back upon, there are always doubts in your mind. So that's what happened to me in my 10th standard. I started working very hard, and I realized two couple of things. I realized that it was very difficult initially to read, because I never had the habit of studying so well till 10th standard. So in 11th, when I started reading, I remember I would take almost a couple of hours to read a couple of pages. And then as I started reading more and more, I became more and more used to it. So it's very important for your body to get used to a certain amount of rhythm. That is why if you start reading very early in your life, That's when you'll be able to read it better, you'll be able to read it faster, you'll be able to understand. So it's kind of an habit which has to come to you, or which has to be installed in you very early in life. And then as I went on studying very, very hard, the first breakthrough was, I think, when I gave my chemistry exam in 11th standard. So I worked very hard, and then I gave the exam. And I was thinking, will I at least pass this examination? You have that kind of insecurity. And suddenly you realize that you've topped the class. And that is, I think, a point of breakthrough for everybody. So I think almost everybody can relate to this kind of instances, when you worked very hard and you are able to clear it, you're able to get what you want. And that point of time, there is a paradigm shift in your way you think about yourself. There is a paradigm shift about your own perception. So that was a point of change for me. And then when I went on studying, I became more and more interested in physics. So I was seriously thinking maybe I should take up engineering, because most of my friends were actually taking up IIT exams and all, engineering, everything. And then, my mom is a pediatrician. So at that point, of course, she played a big influence on me. And she would always say that, doctors, the more they age, the better they become. There is no retirement doctor, and you don't get in this kind of gratitude in any other profession. You treat a patient, the patient is grateful to you for you to life. So at my home, I never heard anything negative about my profession. My father was a banker, but he had a huge amount of respect to my mom and his profession and her profession. So that kind of started making me think that perhaps I should take up medicine. And by end of 11th standard, I was very sure that I will do medicine. I'm not going to do engineering. So even though I did clear the engineering exams, but finally I ended up taking medicine. So I would say that when I took up medicine, it was not out of some kind of inspiration from inside. You always, I think at that young age, you always tend to look upon other people. That is, I think nowadays people have much more opportunities. So they are able to kind of judge things for themselves. So I think situation today, as of today, is very, very different. So you are able to interact with a lot of people, you're able to interact with a lot of professions. You also have some kind of, you are able to try out and see whether this profession is actually for you. So you have a lot of options. So this kind of options were not available way back then. But yeah, in a way, looking back, I think I did the right decision. I'm quite happy, doing this profession.
So when you, if I ask you, right, when you have your very first year of medicine, MBBS, so when you enter the college, so was it very difficult for you to get into classes, and because you had a mindset for being an engineer, and though you have a respect for medicines, so did you realize somewhere that would have been a better engineer than we are doctors?
See, let me tell you one thing. Medicine in the initial 1 or 2 years is grueling, because it's not about understanding anything. It's just about memorizing a lot of facts. Also, if you look at anatomy, everything is Latin in there. You have huge names, like you have a small muscle here, it is called as levator palpebrae superioris alcanace. It's in a Latin name. Then you have another muscle here, it's called as sternocleidomastoid. You have another muscle called trapezius. So everything is practically named in Latin. And there's no question of anything trying for you to try to analyze it, at least in the initial times. And I do know a lot of colleagues, who joined medicine and they would curse every day. They would say that, where did I get stuck in? Why didn't I choose engineering? But for me, I realized, even though I found it, I would say, challenging initially to get used to it. But at some point inside, I realized that this is a profession I need to get settled in. So there's no way out of it. And when you seriously decide about the profession, you cannot have everything which is good about it. There are going to be some tough things. There are going to be some things which you will enjoy. So it's an overall experience which counts. So at that point of time, I kind of accepted the medicine, whatever I was reading. So I fully accepted. I accepted that, yes, you need to memorize this. You need to get into this terminology. You need to get into this subject. So I started working very hard, and I kept on topping each years. So I topped the first year, I topped the second year. So that gave me the confidence. So that initial breakthrough from the school time, the transition between 10th and 11th, I think that was a very important period. And that gave me a very good push to give more value and give more concentration on my career and my studies.
So you said, right, currently you said, just said that when you into very first years, it's something like somewhere the field is different and you need to mug up a lot of things. So somewhere every students feel like the speech would have been better, would have been way. So currently you're heading a department neurosurgery in AIIMS. And you're the team leader as well, where the government of India initiatives are working as a different project as well. So when you see and when you look back to your college areas and days when you were students and when you now as a professor and a head of departments, what challenges you find as a professor and dealing with patients and dealing with the students?
Yeah. So can I take some time answering this?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
it
please.
okay, or do you have any kind of time restrictions?
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
So that's a very interesting question which you asked. So it's very important for you to, I have realized number of things. There's a huge amount of difference on how I perceive the profession as of today, on what I used to perceive it 5 years ago, and I used to perceive it 10 years ago. I used to perceive it 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when I finished my medicine. There has been a lot of change in the way I perceive medicine. Now, to answer that question, you have to know, I'll go back a little bit more broadly on how we are brought up in our education. When we educate ourselves or when we get into any kind of profession, there are two elements to it. And that these two elements, I think, are the reason why the humanity or the human race is much more superior to any kind of other race, any kind of other animal race or mammal race. We have two unique things. One is we have a shared imagination and we have a shared trust. Okay. So by shared trust, we mean that we have layers of shared trust in the society, which we take for granted. We don't even realize that we are actually sharing trust. And I can give you a simple example. For instance, if you pay 500 rupees to somebody, that person takes that piece of paper and then gives you some commodity for it. So that piece of paper is completely worthless. But the reason he is accepting that piece of paper is that there is an element of trust he puts on it. That tomorrow, if I present this piece of paper to somewhere else, I'm going to get an equivalent value. And the layers to it, there are at least multiple hundreds of layers in which our whole human race is embroiled in. And that is where we function within the current socio-economic status. And the second thing is shared imagination. Okay. So when you think of shared imagination, we are in a society where we are kind of interacting with each other at a very, very, I would say, at a very, very cognitive level. So for instance, we are chatting on the Zoom. This is a shared imagination. I'm speaking about something and you're catching this. For a third party who is observing us, it means nothing. Whatever we are doing is just figments of imagination. Similarly, how people interact with each other, how they interact on social media, this is all about shared imagination. So fundamentally, these are the two tenets on which our whole civilization has been built upon. You take it to one step further. We are unfortunately also standing on a tenet, I tell my students this, we call it as the Red Queen syndrome. I don't know if you've read Alice in Wonderland. So you have that Red Queen. So Alice asks the Red Queen that the world where I come from, people have to run faster than they can walk so that they can stay where they are. Then the Red Queen answers, oh, in my place, you have to run at least 2 times faster than you can walk so that you continue to staying in that place. So we are in a society where there is a lot of becoming. Okay. Yeah, so when I say becoming means every person is not able to concentrate on the present. So for instance, if I ask my resident to come and assist me, he's never in present with me. He would be assisting me in the surgery and then he will be thinking of something else. He's already in the hostel. He's already, sleeping there. He's already preparing for the next day. So he's never in that moment. So unfortunately, all of us have spent our lifetimes only in future. We have never concentrated on the present. So when we were kids, we were told that bhaiya tu 10th class pass kar le, sab kuch theek ho jayega aur kuch nahi chahiye. Then after 10th, it's 12th. भाई तू 12th बोर्ड पास कर ले, कहीं इंजीनियरिंग में या मेडिकल में सीट आ जाए, उसके बाद तू रिलैक्स कर. Then suddenly you realize that after that is when your challenge starts. You get into medicine, again it's a series of challenges. And then you say, oh, MBBS kuch nahi hai. You get a PG somewhere in a good institute, then it's done, you're finished. Then suddenly when you give a PG or MCH, even if you get into AIIMS and do your MCH or PG post graduation there, you suddenly realize that you're nowhere. Again you need to find a job. And when you get into a job, suddenly you realize that this job is not enough, you need to establish yourself. So there is no end to this. And when there is no end to this process, you're always stuck into the future. You're not stuck with the past, present. So I think one of the most important things, what I have learned as I've aged over years, is to concentrate on the present. The more you concentrate on the present, the more you are out of that Red Queen syndrome. You don't have to run twice as fast to stay where exactly you are. You are there exactly on how many steps you take. If you take 39 steps, you are there at the 39th step. You don't have to run 150 steps in order to cross 39 steps or 40 steps. Are you understanding me what I'm telling you, Ayush?
Yes, you have mentioned very important points, sir. They're very important,
Yeah.
Living in the moment.
So
That's very important. Somewhere
yeah, so I think that has been my biggest lesson. And it's not as if it's completely sunk into me completely. It's not as if it's completely sunk into me. But as I'm getting older and older, I'm learning to be more and more in the present. And if I go back, I wish I was in the present when I was in school. I wish I was in the present when I was in my college. I wish I was in the present when I was doing my medicine. Because when you look back, you think maybe you've not experienced it completely because you're always looking at the future.
So what challenges you see apart from when you teach your students? Because you already have come through and you have realized that living in moment is very difficult for the students. You mentioned, right, resident of yours, when you perform surgeries, they are somewhere else. And we actually are somewhere, we even reach to that level, we have some milestone to achieve. We have that dreams every day and we dream to something else. So do you realize some challenges when you ask your students to live in movements, and what set of challenges you have when you treat a patient, when you have surgery or patient, or when you perform a surgery?
See, the challenges are many. In fact, there are challenges, I would say, at a personal level. There are challenges at a professional level. There are challenges at a national level. Okay. Now let's start with national level. I think the biggest challenge for our country is to find some kind of a middle path. We are dealing currently with a healthcare system which is only dealing with the two ends of a spectrum. I'm not taking AIIMS, I'm considering AIIMS as an exception. It's an institute of national importance. It gets a lot of patients. Its funding is much more. So I won't like to include AIIMS into this. But if you look at the healthcare systems, what we have, on one hand, we have the government systems. So we have the typical government medical colleges. So if you walk into that's the kind of medical college even I have graduated from. If you walk into the wards, they're very dirty, they're very filthy. You have dirt and filth everywhere. You go into one of those medical colleges, you can go maybe Kanpur, I don't want to name any place, but if you go into any state medical college, you can see that they're absolutely run down. The government is of course making a lot of effort to bring them up, but you see that there are these issues. Plus there are a lot of issues regarding employment, regarding the way the people are promoted, a lot of issues, the way a person meritocracy can be encouraged. But there are certain advantages to the government system, that if a patient comes, the treatment is always as per the scientific protocol. So whatever happens, I always get told at AIIMS that they would always come for a second opinion. A lot of patients come for second opinion because they go to a private hospital, they are asked to do some kind of surgery, they don't trust it. They say, oh, should I actually undergo surgery? And they always come to AIIMS for a second opinion. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, you have this pure corporate structure, where the whole of medical profession is completely exposed to the market forces, which I think is not optimal. It's not a good thing at all. Because as doctors, we've never been trained to take care of market forces. We've never been trained to deal with market forces. We've been trained only to practice medicine as per the Hippocratic Oath. And suddenly you are exposed to the corporate hospitals where these young MBAs give you targets every month, that this month, we are paying you this much salary, you need to earn this much of money. And then, so I think both the extremes of the systems are quite bad. So the biggest challenge from the national level is to homogenize medicine. They need to create a middle path where medicine can be very easily accessed by every common person. And if somebody wants to pay extra money, they can maybe get private hospitals. But where the medicine has to be practiced as per evidence available. So it's not that every person who walks into the hospital, you have to do 30,000 worth of investigations. So there has to be a very good rationalization. Otherwise, we are wasting we are wasting the national resources. You have an MRI, it could be very well be used for getting it done for some other needy patient, and you're doing it unnecessarily for a patient who may not require it. Okay. So I think the most important thing is how the government can connect all the medical systems available in our country together in order to produce a much more better homogeneity. So I think that's the biggest challenge at the national level. Now, coming down to my professional level, I think the biggest challenge what we face nowadays is the training. So, for instance, training in neurosurgery is one of the toughest training which you could ever have, and that cannot be compromised. I remember when I was doing training, we did not even have post-duty offs. So we would have those issues when we would operate for 2 days and 2 nights continuously, even in the night. And again, on the third day, you would go for elective surgery. So we were losing sleep regularly, at least for 2 days a week, not sleeping at all. Now the rules have, of course, changed. People get a post-duty off. I'm not saying you should not get a post-duty off. You should get a post-duty off. But what one has to understand is, if you do not, put in certain amount of effort, if you are not able to burn some candles, if you're not willing to lose some amount of sleep, if you're not able to go through certain kind of, proactive discomfort, if you don't put yourself into some kind of a proactive discomfort, you are not going to learn your skills. And sadly, I think nowadays students are not willing to put in so much of effort. And not only that, we also have the number of seats increasing without the proportionate increase of infrastructure. So in many medical colleges, you have 2 seats for neurosurgery. They have increased it to 4 seats, 5 seats, 6 seats, without increasing the number of teachers or number of infrastructure. Just because India needs more physicians, more neurosurgeons, you cannot compromise on the quality. Medicine is not a shortcut. You cannot learn neurosurgery in 1 or 2 years or 3. You have to go through the full course. And even after you finish neurosurgery, there has to be hand-holding for a lot of time, at least for 4 or 5 years. The third problem I see is that there is relatively non-development of infrastructure as compared to the number of neurosurgeons and neurologists who are passing out. So there are more number of neurologists and neurosurgeons who are passing out, but they're not able to get jobs because outside there is no good amount of infrastructure which can support their jobs, which I think is a terrible thing. So for instance, when I was doing neurosurgery residency, neurosurgeons were always in great demand. Anywhere you could get a job because they were always in shortage. But as of today, there are too many hospitals and the number of opportunities are not so much. So there is no proportionate increase of infrastructure. That is very much required. If you don't do that, we are going to. So it means that on one hand, we are training more people. And I think the same issue is for engineers. But at the same time, when you pass out and there are no jobs, so what are you going to do? So for instance, if you look at NHS in the UK, it's a streamlined system. I know there are a lot of disadvantages for NHS. Many people are not happy with it. But still, the fact is that if you go through a neurosurgical course in UK, it's the UK government's responsibility to give you a job, and you're going to get a job. and almost everybody have the same equal benefits. Okay. And the next most important thing is, I think somewhere you have to have an adequate amount of academic versus practice. You cannot say that, you are in the government sector, you cannot practice, or you are in the private sector, you cannot come into the government. I think there has to be an healthy mixture of the two, so that everybody is just practicing medicine. It's not just private practice, or it's not just academic practice. So I think these are some of the big challenges we are facing. It's not just for neurosurgery, it's for the whole field of medicine. And there is a very, very urgent need in order to streamline all these things. So since you mentioned about challenges, so these are the things what I put forward.
And I see, sir, we have pointed out a lot of things in these very questions. And I agree with this when we see the medical infrastructure especially to our country. And we have seen the COVID scenario, how we have dealt with the whole, due to lack of medical infrastructures and facilities, we have suffered a lot. I see the government and hope the government will take care of and will see, like, so doctors like such you will bring some changes and we'll see futures of India with the right hand. So I was going through a research paper. I went to one research paper of yours which says absolute alcohol can cure patient from a tumor. So can you throw some light on it?
So since this is more like a general interview, I will speak in a more generalized terms, because if I become more technical, then it's because it may become boring for the
I
listeners.
agree. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I read a very interesting book, and I was quite, I would say, influenced by it. I don't know if you read it. It's called as a Blue Ocean Strategy. Have you read it?
No.
So Blue Ocean Strategy is how you can capture your own market. Okay. So you have two kinds of oceans. One is a blue ocean, another is a red ocean. So blue ocean is blue because there are no sharks in it. Red ocean is red because there are a lot of sharks and they're eating each other and spilling blood. Okay. And it's very important. I always tell my students that when you pass out, it's very important what you would like to choose as a subspecialization. If you want to choose something which a lot of other people are doing, you will end up, kind of becoming one of many. You will not be able to make any kind of, you will not be able to create any kind of new things in that. So that is called as choosing red oceans. For instance, in neurosurgery, I would say, what are the red oceans? I would say it's a spine surgery. A lot of people are doing spine. It's become so common. Orthopedicians are doing, neurosurgeons are doing. So somebody wants to start doing spine surgery as of today. There are too many people trying to do. And a lot of people are putting implants. Some people are putting implants even when it is not required, which is absolutely, not to be encouraged at all. Then similarly, you have something like skull-based surgery, which again is a red ocean because a lot of people doing it. But if you want to look at blue ocean, it would be something like epilepsy surgery. That's an area which we started. And now we are training a lot of people. And when we started, because we were the people who started it, so there were hardly anybody, and we were able to create a mark in that. So now coming back to the research paper of absolute alcohol, so that we have used that for a condition called as a spinal hemangioma, which is a very, very serious condition. So you have a very vascular tumor which is appearing within the bony vertebra, and it kind of expands and starts compressing the cord. And if you go operatively and try to open up the tumor, the patient is just going to lose blood. It's extremely vascular. And I remember, I think about 20 years ago, I did a large hemangioma. So we went from the back, we put number of screws. Then I went from the front, and then we tried to remove that vertebra having that, and we lost about 4 liters of blood. And a lot of blood transfusion has to be given, and the patient fortunately was saved. But that is the point when we realize that this is not the correct way of doing surgery. Okay. So at that point of time, you realize that no, this is, and I remember one American saying that if something is difficult, it is not right. So that is what everybody was doing at that point of time. They would say, oh, we will do hemangiomas, we have to operate hemangiomas, there's no other way. And then we went back to the literature and we found that somewhere in 1950s, people were using absolute alcohol for embolization. By embolization, it means when you inject it into the tumor, the whole tumor kind of becomes completely avascular. So what we did here is we opened up the patient, we put screws, and we injected absolute alcohol into the vertebral body, after which the whole hemangioma becomes avascular. And we converted a very difficult procedure into a very simple procedure. So this is speaking about the blue ocean strategy. When we converted a very difficult technique into a very simple technique, A, it became very safe for the patient. B, it became much more effective. We now have a follow-up for almost 10-15 years. And all these patients are doing very well. And C, it's also very, very inexpensive. The cost of embolizing a patient, is only the cost of absolute alcohol, which is hardly $1. That's it. Rest of the cost only goes towards the implants. Otherwise, you would have to do a standard embolization, and that would go into at least 4 or 5 lakh rupees. So nowadays, the onyx embolization is 4 or 5 lakh rupees. So that is how this technique was very useful, and now it's been practiced by all the surgeons across the country as well as across the globe.
So this would be my last question, and I'm like, for giving your time. I can ask one suggestion which you like to give to all medical students, and especially those students who aspire to be in doctors. So what would be that one suggestion you give to aspiring doctors, engineers, and especially the neurosurgery department aspiring people?
See, I only say one thing about medicine. Now, I know a lot of families, people are not happy being doctors. And they always criticize, they always keep on saying that, oh, why did I choose this profession? Why did I choose this profession? But ultimately, you have every profession where some people can like it, some people may not like it. Now, both me and my wife, we always loved this profession. And the fact stands out because, when my daughter had to choose a profession, she automatically chose medicine. We didn't force her. We said that, why don't you want to do something else? Why do you want to do medicine? He says, both of you are so happy in it. Why should I want to do anything else? I would say only this much to my students, that you are free to choose whatever you want. Choose medicine only if you have the correct aptitude towards it. Okay. Don't choose medicine because you want to earn a lot of money out of it. But one thing is sure, when you choose medicine, there is no retirement. A. B, unlike other professions like finance or engineering who burn out by the time you're 45 or 50, your profession here actually starts when you're 45 or 50. And there's no retirement. You could still be practicing at 70, 75. I have people who are 90 years in my hometown who are still practicing medicine, and they have a lot of people. And it gives them a lot of satisfaction in that age. Let us say you're 75 years and you're seeing patients, and the patients are coming to you, and you're still able to give them consultations, and they're feeling grateful to you. I think it's a wonderful feeling. And C, when you treat somebody, when you cure somebody, the kind of gratitude you get from the patients, I think that is unmatchable in any other profession. So these, I think, are the big advantages what we have for this profession. Personally, neurosurgery is an amazing profession, but I would also say that it's a very tough profession. Many times you may have to deal with patients who may not have good outcomes. For instance, you operate a head injury who is very sick. Obviously, that patient is not going to improve. Or you operate on a patient's brain tumor, who has a cancer. Obviously, that patient, is not going to improve. So you have your downsides also. And then, you could be operating for 8-9 hours on a brain tumor, and then suddenly you find that, the patient is not doing very well because it was a complex case. And again, that could hit upon you very badly. But the whole thing is, let us say you have to like it. So once you start liking it, there is no going back. You're going to love every day of it. So I think that way, that is the biggest encouragement that I could tell to anybody, that if you choose medicine, every day it's going to become better. There is no retirement from this. So as you become older, you become more respected. you become more known, and you find that most of your colleagues, they retire. For instance, right now I find most of my classmates are retired who have taken engineering. They're not doing anything much. There somebody is opened some shop, he's helping somewhere, some other person is just sitting not doing anything. They say they are enjoying their lives, but the bottom line is, unless you're doing something productive, you never enjoy your life. No, so that illusion of retirement is only an illusion. When you retire and you're not doing anything, you don't actually feel very good about it. You need to be productive every day of your life. That's how our Prime Minister Modi is so active. Because he finds himself so useful. That's how he's getting so much of energy in order to serve the country. And the best part of medicine is you never retire. You it's like wine. You always go on maturing. You become better and better with time. I think that's the best bit of advice I could give to anybody who wants to take up medicine.
So I would like to thank from a core of heart for giving so much of time and speaking so frankly, and spoke a lot of things, I would say. So I would like to end and thank you that living in moments is very important. So whatever people will be watching this video, I would say, let's live in moment. That's an important part of our life. So thank you so much, sir, for joining today.
Thank you, Ayush.